Hello and welcome to Green Pass Gaming Sunday podcast. I am your host Flap and welcome to Sunday's podcast with the GPG crew, some fire topics and hopefully some fantastic chat going on tonight. We've got a few topics where we can get the live chat involved. So really looking forward to digging into this to this week's show. The news has been a little light on the ground, but I'm kind of guessing this is the quiet before the storm, as it were, in terms of E3 and stuff. So, what are we discussing tonight? We will be discussing. Well, we are discussing the GPG Crew Confessions. I will explain slightly more about that afterwards. We've got things like Starfield, the disparity with Biomutant, Netflix entering the gaming sphere, and all kinds of good stuff. But before we get into any of that, let's introduce the GPG crew and let's go in order, shall we? Let's start on the screen with Puxley. How are you, my friend? How's things?
Yes, good evening and good evening, chat. I'm doing very well, thank you. Pretty light on gaming this week, actually. I mean, I finished Resident Evil 7 and some of the free DLC content. And actually, of course, we had a small family gathering yesterday on Saturday. We met up for the first time in a very long time.
We did.
And you let me Immortals Phoenix Rising, and I've put just over 2 hours into that. I've literally just finished a prologue where I've got the wings and I've flown over to another island and I'm ready to continue the journey. And so far, I'm actually really enjoying it.
Oh, it's a great game. Yeah, I loved Phoenix. I don't know if
it's
others...
100% my kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to jumping in.
Yeah, it's not as anywhere as intensive as Valhalla or the Assassin's Creed type things, but I found it really enjoyable. I'm wondering if the other guys have actually played it. That's pretty cool. I've had quite a heavy gaming week, but perhaps we'll do me last. But let's come next up. We've got Scott SX2. How are you, my friend? Congratulations are in order, I hear. Gonna tie the knot.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. How's your week been?
It's been good. Very light on gaming for me, though, to be perfectly honest. We had a nice little week away in the Peak District here in the UK, which was, well, it was just lovely just to get away. We had a couple of holidays cancelled last year due to the pandemic, so we finally, at the fourth try, managed to get away and spend a little bit of time away. And yeah, I guess I took the opportunity to pop the question. Thankfully, she said yes, as you may have seen on Twitter, which
always
is
a relief.
Which is pretty good. Yeah, I was pretty confident, but you never know until the answer. So yeah, it's I say it's been a pretty light week. I did actually take my Xbox controller with me when we went away, just in case we had any bad weather, and I thought, I'll maybe get some xCloud gaming in, but the internet there was horrendous, so I didn't have any chance to play anything, I'm afraid. So I've tried to squeeze a few things in this weekend, but yeah, very, very, very light on actual games this week for myself.
Oh, okay. Well, perhaps you can make up for that next week. Just out of interest,
definitely.
Have you played Phoenix? Is that something that would be on your radar if you haven't?
I've not played Phoenix myself, but to be honest, it is something that I would like to check out. It's probably one of those games that I'd love to see hopefully come to Game Pass maybe at some point. I'm not sort of sold on that open world sort of game, as we might come on to in a moment.
But
actually.
You like Zelda, don't you?
I did actually really like Zelda, if I'm being honest, but I think that's the exception, maybe more than anything. But obviously this does appear to be, at least visually, very inspired by Breath of the Wild.
Absolutely.
So it's maybe one, if it went on sale or maybe came to Game Pass, I say that I would check out, but probably not one I would pick up sort of at launch. So maybe one day, obviously, if the rumors of some sort of Ubisoft thing coming to Game Pass in the future, might get a chance then.
No, fair enough. Yeah. Well, Luke, let's come to you. How are you, my friend? How's your week been? What have you been up to?
Very well, thank you. Yes. Pretty light for me actually.
Wow.
Been quite slammed at work, so my gaming has been fairly limited, and I'm coming off the back of Returnal and Resident Evil Village, so I'm kind of in that lull period. So the only real thing that I've been playing is The Last of Us Part 2 again, because obviously they had the
upgrade.
Patch, the upgrade that came to it to make it 60 FPS, which is really cool. So I've I'm kind of beyond halfway again in the game ish. So that's been cool. But other than that, yeah, it's been really light. So I'm just kind of looking forward to having a bit more free time maybe in the next few weeks to actually sit down and play something.
Just out of interest, Phoenix Rising, your kind of game or not?
So I played the demo. It was pretty decent from what I played. I'm kind of a bit wary of Ubisoft, as you probably remember from last week's show. Yeah. So it's certainly, as you say, less intensive, or seems less intensive than Assassin's Creed. So it might be one that I have a look at, but it didn't grab me in a way that makes me really want to go back to it. As in buy the game and progress with it. But I may do at some point, but just not right now.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Like you say, if it comes to a Game Pass as part of the Uplay deal, then yeah, certainly worth picking up. I absolutely loved it. Well, I've probably outplayed all of you put together then, because I finished off for a second time God of War at the beginning of the week. I completed Uncharted 4. I completed The Last of Us Part 1. And I am now 40% of the way through Spider-Man as well, all in the last week. So it's been quite a session, and I am catching up on the sort of...
You in Miles Morales?
I am saving the original, and I'm saving Miles Morales for when that's done. So quite heavy PlayStation game. I'm kind of catching up on the last 4 to 5 years of PlayStation games, and having a great time. And like you said, the PS5, really enjoying the PS5. And it's great to see some of these games at least running at 60 frames per second, if not, some of the ones. I'd like Uncharted to be running at 60. It's quite strange, some of the games they have picked to make the upgrade for and not others, but there we go. Fantastic.
Do you mind if I ask how you find the controller of the PlayStation 5? Obviously, that's kind of one of the big differentiators between the Xbox and the PlayStation this time around. How are you finding that?
I absolutely love the controller. It really surprised me, if I'm honest. Playing Astro's Playroom for the first time, it really surprised and impressed me. I love the adaptive triggers. And to be honest, there's moments in Astro's Playroom, and Luke will probably know this, there's moments where they're not actually active and they're just normal triggers, and I actually really miss them at that point. It's fantastic, but just the haptic feedback, and it's a fantastic controller, and I think Xbox will probably follow suit at some point. I think it's something that will stay. I'm a little bit despondent with how few games kind of support it at the moment, but obviously appreciate we're at the very beginning of this generation and the controller. I think Miles Morales supports it. There's a few other games as well that support it, but I'd like to think that once the third parties jump on board, then it might become a bit more mainstream. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, no, I think. Firstly, I think it's a really hard thing to convey to people how the haptics feel and how the triggers feel, because people hear haptics and they just think, oh yeah, well, X, Y, and Z controllers have haptics, and they all do, but the DualSense is quite unique in how it uses them and how it feels, and the triggers are the same thing. Pretty much every game I've played on PS5 has supported it. The ones that don't are PS4 games, essentially. So, God of War, Last of Us, Uncharted, none of those have been patched to take advantage of it. So you just get your standard rumble for those. But when you go to Miles Morales and Returnal uses it exceptionally well. Resident Evil Village that uses it as well. It's a bit more subtle in that, but it does use it. But Astro is the real showcase of this is what you can do with the controller. It's super impressive.
I'll tell you one thing that struck me, Scott, and again, perhaps it's something that Microsoft might consider at some point in the future, but the little speaker that's in the controller, when you're playing The Last of Us, bearing in mind I haven't played the part 2, this is the first one, and bearing in mind this is obviously a PS4 back compat version of the game. When you pick up like a little tape recorder with some sort of script on it, you pick up like a voice memo off the table and you press play, it actually plays through the speaker of the controller. And at first, that's really surprising and great. But the strange thing is that they actually put the reverb on your TV speakers. So you get this really peculiar sound effect that sounds ultra real. It's really bizarre.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
fantastic.
actually, to the benefit, when you were first explained that, I thought, oh, that might sound a little off or weird, but if it makes it sound a little bit more realistic, that's pretty cool. So the PlayStation 4 controller didn't have the mic. The mic's sort of new to the PS5 controller.
It didn't have the mic, but it did have the speaker. So this is the speaker.
Yeah.
That obviously
okay, yeah, cool.
But no, I'm really impressed. There's been some chat actually saying that with the rumble triggers in the Xbox, I was a little bit dismayed with how infrequently they seem to be used, unfortunately. And you know, obviously, when a platform holder creates these sort of things, it's normally left up to the first parties to really sort of drive it home. You know, this kind of new technology. I think it worked really well actually in the Forzas because you can actually feel the ABS kicking in or wheel spinning and stuff like that. I think it's used to great effect on there. But it's just a shame that perhaps, you know, there couldn't be a little bit more parity between the two kind of consoles, because I think more third-party devs would probably buy into these sort of these additional controller things. But wow. We've got a little bit of housekeeping to do actually. I've just seen in there, Pixel Slapper, we couldn't get hold of you last week to give you the code for Watchdog Legions. I don't know if you're on Twitter. If you are, please make yourself known, but I have seen that you'd like to donate it back, so we'll have a chat with Ballman Gamer and see how we'll kind of approach that. If you're absolutely sure you want to donate it back, that's absolutely fine. That's not a problem. But let's have the conversation. Make yourself known on Twitter with us if you're on Twitter. If not, I think we've got the email.
Discord.
Discord. Let's do it through Discord. If you can, if you're on Discord, we can do it through there, can't we? So fantastic. Thank you, chat. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We are in the confessional stage of GPG, and I thought this might be a little bit of fun, and it would be great if we could get the chat involved in this as well. But I thought the first topic we could do confessions of the GPG crew. And this is basically 2 games, and again, get involved if you can, chat. 2 games that you've never played that are quite popular, and also 2 franchises that are very popular that you just cannot get on with for whatever reason. So who should we go to first? Let's go to you first, Luke, because I think I might know what your first one might be. But give us a game that a popular game that you've never played.
That I've never played. Okay, so this is a little bit difficult because every time I would think of a game, I remember that I've played it in some capacity. It might not have been for very long. So
I'll accept that. That's fine. I don't mean one that you've never played, perhaps, but one that you gave 10 minutes and thought, nah.
But I've tried in any case to get ones that I haven't played at all. Okay. So. The one, and this is a series, but it applies to every game in the series, that I've actually never played at all is Life is Strange. Oh. Which is obviously a really popular, quite popular series. And by all accounts, everything about it pretty much interests me because I do like those kind of narrative choice-based games. I really liked a lot of the Telltale stuff, for example. But it's just something I've just never got around to actually picking it up, which is quite strange. So that's one of them. That's interesting.
That could actually go on my list of games that I have played but didn't really like, to be honest. So that would be interesting. No, that's fine. But does that ever come up in conversation? And can people, to be honest, I mean, there's probably quite a few people that haven't played that. I mean, there's a few games that I haven't played that people are like, really? You've never played that? It's like, no, I've just never really had any interest in it. But
I can give you one that is an overlap. So, and I might as well, because this is a bit more controversial, I suppose, which is a game, or rather a series of games that I have played. I've played both of the main ones that have come out in the last 10 years. But I've never given it any time at all. And I don't like it at all. And that's the Fallout series. So Fallout 3 and 4.
Yeah. That would be on my list too, mate.
Yeah. So
wow, really?
Which is a little strange, and it's strange for a couple of reasons. One, I absolutely adore Elder Scrolls.
Right, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, so Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, love them, put countless hours into them, and just think they're brilliant. So that's a bit of a weird one. I think the main reason for that is because I really like the setting. I like fantasy settings.
Yeah.
So it's much easier for me to forgive maybe some of the, idiosyncrasies of Bethesda games that you get, or at least BGS games. Fallout, I've just always found, and like I said, the Bethesda Fallouts, I just find them so boring, just incredibly boring. Like the world is just so boring to me. And again, it's not because it's post-apocalyptic, because I like a lot of other post-apocalyptic games, like anything kind of zombie post-apocalypse, or like the post-apocalypse settings, like Horizon Zero Dawn, something like that, for example, where the kind of nature's reclaimed the world.
Yeah.
But I just find that kind of nuclear aftermath really dull, super, super dull. The combat's garbage, like totally dreadful. I just never found it that engaging. So that's probably a more controversial one that overlaps on both of the lists.
It does make me laugh in the fact that they have the VAT system, and it's almost there to aid with how bad the combat is sometimes.
Yeah. I think that was the biggest thing for me for Fallout as well. I don't like that that VAT system, and they had a similar thing in Outer Worlds as well, didn't they? Did they? Was Outer Worlds? Did they have something similar?
Yeah, they did. I'm sure they did.
Yeah, I think they didn't. I didn't quite like it there either when I tried that. But
no, funnily enough, I enjoyed that more than Fallout though. But I think that's because of the setting change.
Yeah, I agree with the setting look. Actually, that's one of the things that didn't quite grab me. I'm pretty much in the same boat where I love the fantasy setting of the Elder Scrolls games. I played more of the Outer Worlds than I have ever done Fallout. Yeah. But yeah, it's just something about it just doesn't grab me at all.
Wow.
Yeah, totally agreed.
We're going to have to counter that then, Pucks. I think we are. I must admit, I like the Outer Worlds. I like the colour palette. There is something about, like you say, post-apocalyptic sort of America that is just very brown and very sort of, I don't know, obviously living in the UK, I can't quite relate to it, perhaps like our friends over the pond, I guess, to a certain degree. I struggle to relate to it, but I still enjoy them. I mean, I've played them all through to the end. And blimey, I think in 3, I downloaded every single DLC as well. I liked them that much. But wow. Just for the benefit of the chat, we're just discussing games that popular games we've never played, or popular games that we just don't like. Pucks, what's your take on that?
What, on Luke's options, you mean?
Well, yeah, let's start with that. I mean, you like Fallout. You're a Fallout guy, I guess.
I really like Fallout. I mean, similar to, as Luke said, the Bethesda Fallouts. I mean, I've never played 1 or 2 back on the old DOS days, I guess.
No, I didn't.
Fallout 3, I absolutely adored. I fell in love with it immediately to the point I think I ended up paying for all of the DLC as well, and getting stupidly involved into everything the game had to offer. And I think I did pretty much almost all the main quests back in the day. You know, we're talking, I don't know, like 200 plus hours gameplay, ridiculous kind of numbers. And I absolutely adored it. And similar to Fallout, I mean, Fallout 4, not quite as much, but to be fair, at the time, I was kind of neck deep in kind of university / work at the time. So I had a lot on my plate anyway. So my gaming time back then was relatively limited, far more than it is now. But Fallout 4, I stupidly adored. I fell in love with it immediately. And if anything, it's the openness of this apocalyptic world, which I find intriguing, rather than, what Scott and Luke think is, they find it bland. I mean, it's fair enough, but it's more the thought of nothingness being there, and then at least in my mind, it's something's got to be there, right? It's kind of the idea, and then that's what I like about when it comes to the exploration of the game. So yeah, I find it really interesting that Luke and Scott just don't really get on with Fallout. Well, but, I mean, that's perfectly fine, of course.
I think that's going to crop up quite a lot in this section because, obviously different strokes for different folks and stuff. But so go on in, Pucks. Give us a game that you've never played, popular game that you've never played. And like I say, it can be one that you've started but kind of put down within.
Oh, I haven't played it at all. And this goes for all of its sequels and spin-offs, is Red Dead Redemption. I have never laid a finger on Red Dead Redemption at all.
1 or 2?
Neither. Nothing at all.
Well,
I've seen the games. They look all right. I mean, I haven't played them. I've seen it being played by an old friend of mine years ago, maybe for about 10 or 15 minutes, and like, I don't mean visually. I mean just watching it in everything that that it had going for it. It didn't really appeal to me too much, if I'm perfectly honest. I mean, I could well, have the game on me and try it out, and I might fall in love with it. But it's a game that I've never really been too interested in playing. Like all of the hubbub around, when Red Dead Redemption 2 was announced and released, and everybody was all over that. Yeah, I wasn't fussed at all, and I was quite happily to just not bother with it.
No, that's strange because I had Red Dead 1 and probably put about half an hour into it back in the 360 days. And it wasn't until Red Dead 2 came out, and I put about an hour into that and didn't, kind of put it down again. It wasn't until about 2 years later that I was watching someone play, and it's like, this story is fantastic, and I got right back in. I've actually completed it twice, and I went back and completed Red Dead 1 at that point, just because it kind of makes sense, storyline-wise. But I think Luke might be patting you on the back there, because I know he's not a huge Red Dead fan himself.
The thing is, though, but I love the GTAs. Like, I mean, because they look like they play very similarly, right, in terms of how the characters move. It's a bit janky and whatever else. But GTAs I absolutely adore playing, like mainly the single player. But yeah, I don't know why. Red Dead, I've never played it and never really felt the need to bother.
Now, that's bizarre, because here's my contradiction. I never really get on too well with the GTA games. It's bizarre, isn't it? Isn't that weird?
Let me take that one step further and just say I just don't like Rockstar games. There's my confession for the night. This is a safe space.
Yeah, but that makes a little more sense and is more consistent with me, because I absolutely love the Red Dead games. It's bizarre, but
I think although obviously they are very much Rockstar games, I guess the Red Dead games I would say were completely different to GTA. Obviously just the setting obviously gives them much more creative freedom to go nuts in the GTA games. You've got well, in GTA 5, you've got like you can fly, you've got cars, you've got all sorts.
It goes a bit nuts, doesn't it?
Yeah, Red Dead's a little bit more grounded. I would sort of gravitate towards GTA a little bit because I guess it's just a big, especially GTA Online. It's kind of just a big sandbox where you can just dick around with your friends a little bit. But yeah, I'd probably just say, Rockstar games in general just don't grab me. Admittedly, I've not played some of their sort of older titles like Bully and
no, I haven't actually,
and things like that. So there are obviously games in their back catalogue I've not experienced yet, but obviously of their biggest franchises, I guess, just they've never really caught me.
Okay, well, I've got one for you. Here's a popular game, or big game. Well, it was, not so much nowadays, perhaps, that I've never played. Splinter Cell.
Oh, blast. I've never been...
I'm with you on that as well. I've never played Splinter Cell either.
That's a shame. That's a shame.
That is a massive shame. So, Luke, you sound like you've played it a little bit.
Yeah, I've played every Splinter Cell. Yeah. Love, well, not all of them. Love most of them.
Yeah, I think the only one I didn't play was possibly Blacklist.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah, that's from what I read at the time. So, Flat, what was it about Splinter Cell that didn't grab you? Because for me, Splinter Cell was one of the first games. I got Splinter Cell and Halo with my original Xbox. Wow. So I've always associated Splinter Cell with Xbox, and I've really enjoyed it since it came out. And then in Pandora Tomorrow, the second game, I believe, they introduced a 2v2 Spies versus Merc mode, which is genuinely one of my favorite multiplayer modes of any game I've ever played in my life. It really was.
Well, the strange thing is, and again, here we go with the contradictions. And, this is what I love about gaming. It does bring out people's foibles and the strange. I absolutely detest, with a passion, stealth gameplay. And there's always a bloody section in most games, particularly shooters, where there's a stealth section. And I just want to go and blow things up, go and shoot things. I can't be bothered to go and sort of sneak around and all of that sort of stuff. Having said that, there is an element of that in The Last of Us to a certain degree. You don't have to. I mean, it is one of those games where you can genuinely stealth it out or go balls to the wall, as it were. But it is also one of those games where your resources are quite low. So it actually makes kind of thematic sense to go stealth on some of it and try and wipe out as many of the enemies in stealth as you can, without kind of using up your precious bullets and resources and stuff like that. And I actually really enjoyed that aspect. But yeah, any of those sort of stealth games where you're kind of creeping around, you've got to take out the cameras and hide from the sort of the vision of the guards and stuff. That just, I don't know. I don't know. I'm a run and gun kind of guy. I think that's probably what that's all about. What about you, Pucks? Why have you never played that? Splinter Cell.
Sorry. I don't know. It's just that, again, it kind of falls similar into Red Dead in a way. Like I know, bear in mind the first Splinter Cell was when I was still in secondary school, whatever else. A lot of friends around me played it, were loving them, raving it all up and stuff. But I guess similar to you, especially back then, I was not really a big fan of stealth type gameplay at all. I like it a lot more now, but it was just I don't know, the story. Well, I can't even say the story. I haven't played the game, but just the way the game looked like it played, and again, just being stealth in general, it just didn't appeal to me. It's as simple as that, really.
I think that's fair.
What about it? Do you two like them?
So I think, well, first of all, the same thing that I guess didn't grab you guys is the thing that got me. I just like pretend to be a spy. Just the gadgets were pretty cool. Like I say, it was kind of one of the first games I got on the Xbox as well. So I've always, it's sort of one of my alongside Halo, it's sort of my earliest Xbox memory that I've got from obviously some time ago. I just really enjoyed the gameplay. I really loved just pretending to be a spy, using all these cool little gadgets. There's just little things that really stand out, which from a lot of games I don't get at the moment, which is just something as simple as Michael Ironside's, I think it was Michael Ironside, his voice is just so iconic playing Sam Fisher. Just the three lights of the goggles and the noise that the goggles made when you put on night vision. There was just something about the way that they handled those elements that just made you feel like you were an actual spy doing these missions. And especially at that time around, I mean, we're talking almost 20 years ago now, aren't we? So I was sort of I wasn't even a teenager at this point, or I would have been in my very early teens. So I was obviously still young, and there was just something just so cool about that. And then, like I say, from Pandora Tomorrow, when they brought in the Spies versus Mercs mode as well, like I say, genuinely that is one of my favorite multiplayer experiences. I could still say to this day, it's still one of my favorites. If you guys didn't play it, essentially it was 2v2. You had two spies that played like Sam Fisher, and then you had two mercenaries which played basically as an FPS at that point, and the spies had to basically do an objective and the mercenaries had to stop them. But what was really cool, and this is in the early days of Xbox Live as well, is if you were a spy, you could go behind one of the mercenaries, you could get them basically in a choke. And because there was no things like parties then, you could talk to the merc as you had them in a choke, and you could knock them out, and then the other merc would come over, and then the other guy would be waiting for the other one to come over, and he would drop down, he would choke the other one out, and then you would do the objective. They would respawn, and there'd be grenades coming over. Because as a spy, you didn't have any sort of way of lethally taking them out. You had, like I say, you could choke and knock them out, or you could maybe use things like smoke and things like I can't remember. It's been a little while, but it was just such a cool mod.
You see, well, I missed out, and you know what? Whenever Splinter Cell comes up, the chat goes wild, saying, we want another one. So it's clearly a very popular franchise that I've kind of missed out for the reasons I stated, I guess. But we'll come to you again, Luke. Sorry, let's just go quickly to the chat. Let's just quickly catch up with the chat if we can. Pucks, where are we?
Yep, I've got a few comments saved here. So, one here from Judzilla Music, who says, "I've not played any Zeldas," which, as a massive Zelda fan, I find insane.
That's the most controversial one we'll probably have tonight. I think, if we're being honest.
I've never played a Zelda game. What? I've never played a Zelda game. To be honest, I've only ever owned a Wii and a Game Boy.
And you didn't even play Zelda on those?
No.
Wow.
To be fair,
Wii Sports and Professor Layton
on the Wii. Yeah, because I really hated the Wii. I'm not a big fan of motion control, so I really dislike the Wii. So I didn't play Zelda on the Wii. But if those are your only two consoles, I guess that kind of makes sense. I'm trying to think what would be the ones that Flaps missed out on, Pucks.
Oh God! Well, on the Wii, it would have been Twilight Princess mainly.
That was one. That was the one that was crossed over with the the GameCube as well, didn't it? Was that one that was?
Yes. Yeah, it was a
came out on
GameCube,
both
late GameCube, but yeah, launch Wii title as well.
Well, you're not on your own,
Yeah.
Judzilla. I'm with you. I'm afraid, my friend. We, yeah. What else have we got, Pucks?
Anime Razza has said, I've never played the Doom games or Perfect Dark.
Okay.
And to be fair, I've not played Perfect Dark either. That's another one on my list. It's not on my list to give you now, but that's one of mine as well.
I've played all of the Doom games, absolutely love them, and I think they get better the older they are. I've started on Doom 1 back in the bloody hell 386 processor days. My God. I had a dabble with Perfect Dark not so long ago, and the game has not aged well for obvious reasons. So yeah, I'm not really up on Perfect Dark. Guys, Doom, Perfect Dark, what's your take?
Doom.
Say I've never played a Perfect Dark personally, so I can't really comment on it either.
Luke?
Yeah,
Sorry,
Doom.
Luke.
I've played. No, don't worry. I've played all of them. I agree with you, Flap. They're just the more you go on in the series, the better they get. Apart from Doom 3, which is just a bit different. I don't think that's bad at all. It's just a different type of game. It's not really a traditional Doom experience. Perfect Dark. I've played Perfect Dark in the N64. Really loved that game, particularly the multiplayer, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Perfect Dark Zero, which launched with the Xbox 360, is irredeemable garbage. I bought that at launch with the 360, and it's to this day the worst FPS I've ever played. It was awful. It was awful. It was totally awful. It was kind of Rare trying to make the magic happen that they'd made with Perfect Dark previously, and they just got it completely wrong. It was just horrible to play. Like, if you play it now, it's even worse, because as Flap said, I don't know if you were referring to the original Perfect Dark, which definitely hasn't aged very well, but Zero arguably has aged even worse, because it kind of doesn't look like, at least with the original N64 Perfect Dark, that it's a relic of its time, whereas Zero was trying to be fairly advanced, I would say, visually, but it's just horrible. It's just totally horrible.
Okay, it's interesting. Pucks, what else have we got?
Yeah, another comment here from Baldman Gamer, who says, I like the whole thing of Watch Dogs series, but after about an hour or so, I can't stand playing them anymore. Lol. Played all of them for a short time and then deleted them. God knows why I always buy the new ones.
Yeah, I've never been into the Watch Dogs. I tried getting into the first couple. I just couldn't get into them, to be honest. Just not my thing, I guess. Okay.
Another one here from Boardman Gamer as well, who says, regarding when we said GTA, I love the GTA games. I've played all of them, but I've never completed a single one.
Yeah, same here. I quite liked
Really?
4.
You've never finished one?
No, I've never finished one. I've got quite a long way in. I opened up all of the islands in 4. How far did I go? I don't even know how far I got in 5, to be honest. Yeah, I've never finished one. I just lose interest, I think.
Fair enough. I mean, it's weird though, because the story's in a way, like, I've recently gone back to 5 through Game Pass, and I've quite enjoyed playing it again, just, on my hour lunch breaks throughout the week when I'm working from home, whatever. But then, having gone back to it after probably completed the game about 2 times already, going back a 3rd time, it's like, the story makes, like, when you really think about it, the story makes no sense at all. Like, I know it's meant to be wild and made up, but in terms of how everything all comes together, it's just so random how, like, these characters are seemingly appear out of nowhere, but then they form this massively important arc to the story, and it's just all bizarre. In a great way, it's bizarre, but it's just nonsense. But that's why we love it, I guess. Sorry, yeah, I've got another one here. So Anime Razor again says, people forget that Red Dead Revolver... people forget about Red Dead Revolver, as Red Dead Redemption 2 is actually the 3rd game in the series.
Yeah, Red Dead was it was an IP that Rockstar bought. I don't think, was Red Dead Revolver actually ever finished? I don't think it was it?
Yeah. No, it was released.
Oh, was it? I didn't realise.
Sure, yeah.
I thought it was.
It was an original Xbox, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a game in progress. Oh, okay. So what's that like? Has anyone played that?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it.
Oh, who made it?
When I played it? It was Rockstar that made it. It was Rockstar San Diego, I believe.
Oh, I thought they bought that IP. I thought they bought the IP.
No, not that I'm aware of.
I'm
but
wondering.
They,
I'm wondering if it was in development with someone else, and then they kind of acquired that
yeah,
studio. Then.
possibly it was. Yeah, possibly that kind of rings a bell. But
Perhaps they finished it.
But yes.
Yeah, a quick Wikipedia entry says that Angel Studios began working on Red Dead Revolver under the oversight and funding of Capcom in 2000.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they were bought and rebranded.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but that was quite enjoyable actually. It was a linear kind of third person shooter. So a different style to what Red Dead would become.
Yeah, absolutely. Pucks?
Yep, I've got another comment here again from, well, that's a question actually from Anime Reza, who says, "What about games that people will play over and over again?"
Oh, that's a big
Just
topic.
to sidestep the topic a little bit.
There's loads of those, I think, usually.
What game have you played the most, Luke?
It depends on what are we talking about, like single player games that you play over, because obviously multiplayer games you play over and over again. So single player, I'd quite happily play something like Uncharted 4 over and over again, just until the end of time. It's kind of that switch your brain off, just enjoy it sort of game. So
it's fantastic.
Something like that. There are lots of games like that, but of recent memory, that's the one that sticks in my mind.
I've completed Oblivion 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the first time I put in 140 or something hours. First time through, obviously second and third time through, and all of the DLC. Oh my God, that's probably my game. That's probably my favourite game ever, or one of them, to be honest. Absolutely love that game. Pucks, what game have you played over and over?
Yeah, the one game that this instinctively comes to my mind is GameCube classic Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker.
Okay.
I know back in the day, especially, it got a lot of hate because of the art style, the art direction, and everything else. Again, as a kid, I loved it, and I think the art style and the gameplay has just aged so well as well. Personally, I've not played the HD remake that came out on the Wii U because I think, let's face it, nobody had a Wii U, or very limited people, I should say. But hopefully, the rumors are true about the those HD releases coming to Switch at some point in the future for the Zelda 35th anniversary. So I'm hoping to play them again. But I've booted up a GameCube so many times just to replay that game and do all of the stuff on it. I just love the magic of the sailing the seas and how, given the game for its time, of the technical limitation was that each zone was loaded in as you sailed into it. But the game just felt so vast. Again, as an 8-year-old looking at the screen, just sailing to all these funky and strange islands, I just thought it was a fantastic experience, and I'll always go back to it.
Yeah, fair enough. Chat, we're in confession. Now is your time to confess your sins. If there's any popular game that you've never played, or if there's a very popular game that you just don't like, now is the time to cleanse yourself, get it out there so everyone knows. Let's do this. Luke, have you got anything else that you need to add? What other games have you got on your list?
I think the only other game that I've got on my list that in terms of that I just really dislike, but that is very popular, which people have heard me talk about this a lot of times, and we were just talking about the series, is Red Dead Redemption 2, which I have lots of different issues with, but I kind of concur with Scott's thoughts, I guess, which is just the Rockstar games in general. I just don't think are very good. Like I mean, there are. I should preface that. I should or qualify it. I think Red Dead 2 is probably the most impressive open world I've ever seen.
Yeah,
to this day. Visually, in terms of systems that go on in that world, the scale, it's incredible, and I could easily spend time just going around that world and having a look at it, and in fact that's probably most of what I finished Red Dead Redemption 2, by the way, and I finished Red Dead 1. I enjoyed Red Dead 1 a bit more.
At least you've played them through to the end, then. That's fair enough.
Yeah. I didn't just put them down. I actually finished them, but it was. I mean, Red Dead 2 was the biggest struggle I've had on finishing a game, I think, ever. So I think I ended up finishing it maybe 2 years after launch or something like that.
What was the struggle? I mean, the story kind of pulls you along, doesn't it, or is it the bits in between the story?
So I don't know if the story does pull you along, but that's because of a different reason. I really struggle with anything story wise that's a prequel, because unless it's something like Knights of the Old Republic, let's say, where technically it's a prequel to all the Star Wars that we know, but it's set so many thousands of years before, you know, the main trilogy and other games in the series, that it's basically an entirely new, unpredictable story, right? So Red Dead 2 was very difficult story-wise for me, because even though Arthur Morgan's a really cool character and I really enjoyed, you know, being part of that gang, and you know, there's Dutch and all the rest, and obviously John Marston.
See, you're saying these names, that's bringing back all of these fond memories for me. It's bizarre, isn't it? Isn't it weird?
So like, even though it's got all of that in it, it's not compelling enough, because I already know how Red Dead 1 ends. So I know, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I'm not engaged by it. So that's kind of but the story's probably the only reason I wanted to see it through to the end.
Yeah.
Because everything else about it, apart from the world, the Rockstar's game design is just not good. It's just not, for me, it's just not enjoyable at all. You know, every mission is so linear that, you know, one wrong move and you can't. There's no out. Yeah, you start again. There's no outside of the box thinking, and it's not as if like I don't enjoy games that are linear. Because I do, you know, single player linear games, for example, that have that kind of like linear mission structure. I can love them, but the thing that really the Red Dead fails to do is, if you're going to have that, if you're going to be so on the rails, that's okay, but mechanically you have to be excellent. And it's not a fun game to shoot weapons in that game. It's not a fun game to take cover. Like, nothing about the gameplay is fun or engaging at all. So when you combine it with the mission design, it's just this, for me, it's this horrible experience.
Did you play it on PC or on console?
I played it on console.
Right, because I actually, I mean, there is one of the shooting mechanics I actually quite like, in the fact that it's obviously got quite a strong auto aim, but what you need to do is then just slightly move up with I think it's the right thumbstick, just to get a headshot. So it never pings straight to a headshot. You've still got to work that extra little bit for the headshot. I struggled with that at first, but I actually ended up really liking that mechanic, because once you've got that muscle memory in, you can be pulling off headshots left, right and centre, and it's quite, I found it quite sort of rewarding, blowing someone's head off, quite satisfying, shall we say. But
I think there's some satisfaction when you do, like, because I think stuff like the gun impact, as in when it actually hits someone, right, and they ragdoll, I think all that's pretty okay. It's just the act of shooting itself, it just doesn't, there's no, I don't know. It's hard to describe. It just feels, everything in that game feels really slow. And sometimes it's fine to be like that, depending on what you're doing. But just for me, I just hate it. GTA is the same. Except GTA, of course, you know, there's a lot more things to do in the world. So you can kind of go off and, mess about and have a bit. I mean, you can in Red Dead. You can do that as well. But
okay.
Yeah, so that's mine.
Yeah, no huge surprise there. This has kind of cropped up before. Scott, what else have we got on your list?
So, in terms of games, I've never played Animal Crossing. Is one that I've never really played, and obviously, New Horizons has proved to just be an outrageously popular title. But I look at that game and I just think I couldn't imagine anything more boring in my life.
Yeah, do you think you're just not the demographic for it then?
Yeah, I'm not, and it's also one of those games that because it was so popular, that kind of made me dislike it more.
It's
in
strange,
some
isn't it?
ways
Yeah, games
because
can do that. It's bizarre, isn't it?
yeah, because at the time that it came out, all I could hear was people talking about bloody parsnips in that game, and and there was like, I was listening to podcasts and people were like, oh, I've had to set up a spreadsheet to get my timing of getting the parsnips so I can sell them at the right time to get bells and things like that. And I'm just looking and I'm saying, how on earth is this fun? And then maybe one that's maybe a little bit more recent, which is maybe on the controversial side, is and it kind of straddles both lines, I guess, is Mass Effect. So I've only played a little bit of one, and the only memory that I have of Mass Effect 1 is getting stuck in a car and then saying I'm never playing this game ever again. Because and I think that's a general complaint of the first one, which I can't remember what the vehicle's called, but I think a lot of people disliked how it controlled. Is that right for the for people who played Mass Effect and maybe more recently the Legendary Edition?
Yes, that was a criticism of the first one. The vehicle is called the Mako, or the
Mako,
Marco.
Yeah.
So yeah, even at the time, I remember playing the game at the time, and it was a bit of an annoyance. It wasn't like absolutely dreadful, but it wasn't particularly enjoyable.
I think we were a bit more forgiving in the 360 days as well, weren't we?
Yes, yeah, and you could get stuck on stuff because it was kind of glitchy and weird with its physics. So
that's my only memory of it, is getting stuck in that car and then never playing it again. So I don't know when the first section of Mass Effect 1 is, when you first are driving the Mako. It might be fairly early, but I don't think I played for very long, and because of that, I never even intend on picking up 2 or 3. So obviously I don't think you could pick up 2 or 3 without playing the first one. I think obviously they're very story-driven games as well. So yeah, Mass Effect and Animal Crossing, put on that list there.
I've got a big one for you. This is a heavy hitter, so brace yourselves, strap yourselves in, guys. I really have no time for the Final Fantasy franchise whatsoever. I just cannot get into it.
It's tough on that.
Yeah, I don't think that's as controversial as you might think, Flap.
I think it's the JRPG thing. It's bizarre, isn't it? I absolutely love my Western RPGs, but the JRPGs I absolutely struggle with.
Yeah,
is it the mechanics, or is it just how the characters look? Because I know it sounds a bit strange, right? But I know there's a lot of people that sometimes feel uncomfortable just because of how the say the female characters are dressed or not dressed, as an example.
Well, I guess there is a little bit of that. The culture is very far removed from what I am used to. The sort of the guys running around with swords that are twice as big as they are, and it's such a cliche that it almost seems kind of comical to me in lots of regards. But I'm not dissing it, because there's so many people that absolutely love this franchise, and I take my hat off to them. And I actually wished I did, because obviously it's got a long pedigree of games. Christ, what are we up to? 15 or something? 16 coming out. What a great franchise to be into if you like it, but I just don't. What does everyone else think?
Is it do you like the combat? Flap, out of interest? So I guess if you don't like the aesthetic and you don't like the turn-based combat, then there's not much there for you. I think there's a couple of things. I have heard the anime style kind of look, I guess. I've heard it from friends, the exact same thing that you just said there, Flap, where people have obviously the most iconic one is Cloud and the Buster Sword, and how it's ridiculously big. I've heard similar things where people said it just looks ridiculous, and that obviously takes them out of it. I'm personally of the opinion that Final Fantasy is a little bit overrated. 10 is by far away my favorite of them. I do like 7, but I do think, having not played the remake, I do think 7 is slightly overrated a bit as well. That's probably a bit of a controversial take. My favorite Final Fantasy actually was Final Fantasy 11, which was the MMO version that I played on the 360. And I've kind of fell off it since 10 and 11, to be honest. I've not played 10.2 or 12 or 13. I've not had a chance to play 14, unfortunately, although that's probably the one I would like to get into. I tried 15, and 15, if I remember, I can't remember sort of when the switch over. Hopefully, someone can help correct me. But they kind of switched to a more action-orientated combat system as opposed to like a turn-based. And 15 had it, and then 7 had a similar system that refined it a bit from what I remember reading at the time. So I don't know if maybe that might click with you a bit more, Flat, where it's kind of more action-orientated rather than the turn-based nature.
Yeah, I guess so. Luke, what's your take on it?
So I'm a massive Final Fantasy fan, both classic and modern. I totally get the kind of, I guess, the aesthetic of JRPGs in general can be quite overwhelming, quite difficult to get. I mean, it depends on the person. Like so I watch a lot of anime, for example, and I always have done. So it's not really difficult for me because I guess when you're in that kind of mode of looking at things and of knowing the kind of norms of that sort of media, then Final Fantasy is just it's another one like that.
Yeah.
It's quite kind of dramatic and over the top and stuff, but that's what I think a lot of people love about them. That the character designs are so wacky, it's so visually striking, and then the storylines are this kind of mix of like really melodramatic kind of moments and big plot twists, and this really huge stakes and that sort of stuff. So, and those are all the things that I really love about those games. And then mechanically it has changed. So you're right, Scott, in that 15 really introduced the new form of combat for Final Fantasy, which is more of an action style. There's no real turn-based elements per se, although you can kind of do these kind of slow-mo pauses where you can select spells or whatever that then roll into the real-time stuff. But it plays a bit more like, I guess, something like a more grounded Devil May Cry or something like that. That's how I'd best describe it. So, Seven's remake is really, really, really great, and I think it's the best modern Final Fantasy there's been for some time. Even though it's obviously it's a remake of a very old Final Fantasy, and 16 is kind of looking to do that sort of the similar sort of thing, but 16 might actually be a bit easier for you to get into a little bit, I guess, because it's based on actual like fantasy, as in that they've gone for the really leaned into the fantasy trope. So it's more of a.
That's the trouble. I mean, I think it was Indie Gamer that put in the chat. He's like, we're at 16. Can I really start this game at Final Fantasy 16?
Yeah, but it's a misconception, I think, because the narratives have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So they're all standalone.
So they're completely all standalone. The only thing that, like let's say Final Fantasy VI has in common with Final Fantasy 15 is that some of the world usage in terms of like plot devices or characters in some senses are not reused, but there's lots of homages to old Final Fantasy. So for example, in Final Fantasy lore, like in many of the games, the idea of crystals, like magic crystals, are like a very common theme. So you might get something like that in, say, 16, but it has no narrative relevance whatsoever to any other Final Fantasy game. It's a completely standalone story. You might as well be playing a separate game, essentially, not called Final Fantasy. Yeah. So, but I do see that a lot, that people are like, well, how can I play them? Like, surely I've got to play all 15 up to 16. It's like, no, you don't. Like, you can get into any one you like because it's a standalone experience. So,
well, that's good to know.
So don't let that put you off. There's other things that might put you off, but don't let that one put you off.
No, fair enough. No, that's a fair point. And to be honest, like I say, if and when, I know there's some on Game Pass anyway, but like I say, if it's free and it's there and I can play it and I've got a spare, I don't know. How long are these games? I get the funny feeling they're quite long.
They can be, yeah. They're usually at least 20 hours.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a commitment, isn't it? And if you're not massively keen on it, and I'll take my hat off to you, my Red Dead hat, for you making it through Red Dead 2 for a game that you're not massively, a fan of. But Pux, let's finish with you, my friend. What have you got left on your list, and what is happening in the chat?
Well, what do you want first? Do you want my never played or don't really like?
It's entirely up to you, my friend.
I don't even think I've touched my don't really like yet. So I think I'm going to give you one of those.
Go on, then.
And this might shock a lot of people. I've played the first part of this game, I don't know, about 5 times, and it has everything about an RPG that I should absolutely love to pieces, but I just could not click with it, and that is The Witcher 3.
Oh, that's on my. You know, it is. I haven't really touched on the games that I've played but don't like, and The Witcher is on my list as well, Pucks.
Okay.
I'm glad I'm not the only one then. But
Well,
You're not alone. You're not alone there, mate.
Here's my take. I have started that game about 4 or 5 times, and I can never get more than 2 hours into it. So
I'm the same. I don't know what it is. I think it's just like, for me, it's like the movement just feels really clunky. It just feels like it's a bit all over the place. I don't know. It's just something about how the game plays and how it feels that I just can't really force myself to like it, even though, as I say, and you must be similar, like when it comes to those kind of RPGs, which...
Well, I think there's a precipice, and a lot of these games have that. And to be honest, even my favourite game of all time, Oblivion, had this precipice that I had to get over. And sometimes that precipice is quite early on in the game, and sometimes you've got to put 4 or 5 hours in before you're over it, and you think, right, I get this game now, and I actually like it. And at first the combat felt a bit janky, but actually I'm getting used to it, and the strange, controller buttons, L1 to sprint or something silly like that, you get used to after a while, I guess. But it's just getting to that point where you can get over the precipice and start enjoying it. But I've never got to that point, to be honest.
So I've just seen in the chat as well. Indie Gamer says, "Good one, Pucks. That's me too." And Pixel Slapper agreed. The Witcher is so boring. Although Pixel Slapper also says the other Witcher game though is Yum. So I assume that's what, Witcher 1 or 2?
2, I would have thought.
Are they any good? I've not played any of them. I mean, the only one I really tried to get into was 3 because everybody seemed to love it, and as we've, all of us seem to hate it, which is great. I guess.
What's your take, Luke?
Not me.
No.
Oh, right. Okay.
Witcher 3 is one of my favourite games ever made. Ever. But I think the problem people have with Witcher 3 to some extent is kind of the same problem I have with Red Dead.
Yep.
Which is that some of what you do in The Witcher 3, I don't agree with everything, but some of what you do doesn't feel like it should feel, and it doesn't feel brilliant to invest yourself in. So. And that's okay, but again, like Red Dead, unless you're then super invested in the story, and The Witcher 3 is really hard for people if it's your first game because it has all this, context of background stuff that you might not know about, so it makes the story hard to get into. Unless you're really invested in it, then it's going to feel like a chore to get through. I do think The Witcher 3 gets a lot better gameplay-wise once kind of 5 or 6 hours in, but by that point, most people who aren't going to like it have already been lost.
And that's the precipice, I guess. And if that's 5 or 6 hours,
and that's the precipice. So it's difficult. It's a difficult. So I do understand it. It's it can be difficult to get into. But for me, I was a big fan of the series anyway. I actually didn't play the first one. I started with 2, which is not an open world game. That was a linear game, which was really, really good. And 3 I was very kind of hyped for, and then it came out, and it's a funny one because it sounds a bit like you with Red Dead, Flap, in that I played a couple of hours and then I put it down, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm quite enjoying this, but I'm not gonna I didn't finish it, and I just left it, and then other stuff came along, and it wasn't until a couple of months later, I guess, that I got back to it properly, and I just was completely invested in it and engrossed and finished it off, and then I played it again and just love it. So it's a weird game in that sense for me, but it's just incredible, and on the back of that, I was really looking forward to Cyberpunk, for example, but that really didn't turn out like I'd hoped it would. So
no, I think we need to have an in-depth review of Cyberpunk at some point. I think we need to do that. But
I'll just quickly add on The Witcher though. I've just seen a comment, a Bullman Gamer saying, "Toss a coin to a Witcher," which of course is the song from the Netflix series, right? But I can't get on with the games, as I just said. But I really do like the lore, and I really enjoyed the Netflix series. That's the thing. Like, I absolutely fell in love with it, but the games I just couldn't. But then, like my cousin, for example, he loved it so much he got a tattoo of one of the characters on his arm. So I know it just, I don't know.
I think I've got a similar feeling towards CDPR as I can do with Rockstar, which because I've never really clicked with their games like The Witcher, I really had little to no hype for Cyberpunk. Obviously, I can appreciate it looked cool, but because of their sort of development past, even though obviously they're different games, there wasn't really anything that they've released that's grabbed me that made me excited for that game, to be honest. And I know obviously a lot of the cyberpunk hype came from the fact that Witcher 3 is just seemingly such a beloved game at this point that sold tens of millions of copies. So I kind of see CDPR in a similar light to how I do Rockstar. And again, it comes down to how the games feel to play. And I think, to be perfectly honest, look, you absolutely nailed exactly how I felt about The Witcher. It didn't grab me enough early on for me to get to a point where maybe the gameplay improved that would have caught me, and I dropped off, probably similar to you, flat within maybe 2 hours or something like that.
Shame, isn't it? Because, like I say, people that have made it over the speed bumps, we call it, absolutely adore the game. And I am conscious that perhaps I just, I do need to give it more of my time, because I lots of times in my life, people have been sort of raving about stuff that I just don't really care for. And then you give it that last final kind of go, and then you kind of see what everyone enjoys about it, and you end up loving it too. So, but the trouble is with games, I mean, they're so time consuming. I mean, I guess an equivalent nowadays is kind of box sets on Netflix, as that kind of thing now, particularly if you're 2 or 3 seasons behind everyone else, and you've got, particularly if it's an American box set, because they have, sort of 12 episodes per season. The UK tend to have about 6, so it's a lot easier to catch up on. But yeah, it's really bizarre. Pux, where are we in the chat? Because this has been quite divisive, this one.
Yeah, I've got quite a few things to go through, so I'll go through relatively quick. Hansworth Senior says, I was addicted to Tetris Effect. You can play for hours and hours in single and multiplayer. That was so good. Indie Gamer, Outer Wilds, which is highly regarded, that I couldn't get into immediately.
Absolutely agree. I struggle with that.
Yeah, I was similar as well. It does also add, but Luke still knows all about that sin. And I plan to rectify it, though. I'm going to go back in at some point.
I'm taking it. You're a fan, Luke?
One of the greatest games ever made.
Yeah, lots of people say that. It's bizarre. Again, it's that precipice I just can't get over. But
Can I clarify? Sorry, is Outer Wilds the Fallout-like one, or is that the other one?
That's the Outer Worlds.
No,
that's funny because they came out very close together, didn't they? And everybody made that mistake.
And they're both kind of space exploration, strangely enough.
Yes. Very different, though. Very, very different.
What else have I got? Fugly. I have never played, not for 1 second, Red Dead Redemption 2, Black Eyed Dog, Outer Worlds this time, dated and boring. Pixel Slapper, OMG, Animal Crossing voices wrecked my head. This is regarding what Scott was saying earlier. Shizno Elite goes, that's how I feel about God of War 2018. Cannot stand it.
I really like it.
And I believe that was around games having so much hype that you end up hating it. I believe that's what Scott was saying at the time. And
I get
that's what that comment's based
and
on.
to be honest, once the hype's died down and you get to play these games at your own kind of pace without, hearing it left, right and centre. And I think perhaps Resident Evil 8 might be a little bit like that for some people. Perhaps like yourself, Pux, once everyone, the majority of people have played it and the hype's died down, you can kind of enjoy it at your own pace. Do you know what I mean? But,
yeah, no, I do. What else have we got? Anime Razza. So this is based on Luke's comments about potentially getting caught in weird loops in games. So my brother played Skyrim and got stuck in a death loop within 10 minutes.
Wow. That's clever.
Yeah.
They are quite buggy.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
It's impressive and not surprising because it's a Bethesda game. So like if there's any kind of game that elicits that, it's usually a Bethesda
I'm
game.
really pleased we're having this conversation and kind of hold on to that thought, Luke, because that will help us on our Starfield discussion coming up next. But go on, Pux.
Okay. Yep, Hansworth Senior again. Never played Animal Crossing before New Horizons, but it just released perfectly with the pandemic. Played it for over 300 hours with my girlfriend. I'm 41, but it's so relaxing.
300 hours in that game, man. That is mind-blowing. Just going around and doing the same
My
stuff.
partner plays that religiously every single day. And a little bit like you were saying, Scott, plans the timings to sell turnips or whatever it is, or parsnips for bells.
Oh, it was turnips, not parsnips. Sorry, that's right, Flat. Sorry.
And it just gets people like that. Luke?
Yeah. No, I was going to say I had like the opposite with that game. So And I always kind of chuckle to myself when I think about it, because I'd never played an Animal Crossing game before New Horizons either. And it was kind of like really close to the start of the pandemic, or in the midst of it, right at the beginning. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to make a real big show of this. Like, I'm going to really get into this. So I went out and I actually bought the Animal Crossing Switch. I already had a Switch, but I bought the, because I was like, oh, that looks cool. Like, I'll have another Switch. It comes with it, and I played it for about 50 minutes, and I was like, no, not for me, that. So I ended up with this Switch. Luckily, my partner, who'd also never played an Animal Crossing game, really got into it, so it was fine. And she really enjoyed it. But now I have my main Switch is this Animal Crossing Switch, which is a great looking Switch. But I'm just like, oh man, I blew like 300 quid to go all in on this series that I'll never touch again.
Wow, that's an expensive mistake.
I'll just, I mean, I'm a big fan of the series. Actually, I dived in way back on the original DS with Animal Crossing Wild World. And then loved it so much I bought the Wii one, which was what was it called? Let's Go to the City. It was called in the UK. And yeah, I absolutely love the series. So I'm surprised you all hate it so much, or just didn't get on with it, I should say. Sorry, I'll carry on with the comments. Pixel Slapper. So this is regarding you, Flap, about Final Fantasy. Pixel Slapper says, "That's it. I'm out."
Yeah, he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy that I didn't like Final Fantasy.
Indie Gamer, that's a good one, Flap. I'm the same regarding Final Fantasy.
There you go.
Fugly, Final Fantasy was a huge turn-off for me. Just not into JRPGs at all. Hated it. I know I'm weird, but I agree with Flap about the game. Achievement, a new listener, I believe, from Austin, Texas, I saw earlier. Welcome. I've tried to get into JRPGs, and I feel like they just have weird pacing.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll keep trying, but Final Fantasy just doesn't appeal to me. Anime Razor again, I've never played a Final Fantasy game, but played Last Remnant, and that's all I've played JRPG-wise. And last one I have here, again from Fugly, who says, I beat The Witcher 3 twice on Death March, which I'm assume's a hard difficulty level, with 100% completion, and I mean everything the game had to offer, I completed.
Wow. No, that is a commitment. Holy moly. Well, wow. What a first hour this has been. Kind of threw this topic together, and I've got a few other ideas for a confessional, so we might have to do a confessional every now and again. And this is to cleanse yourself and get out into the open some of these admissions that we have. And I've really enjoyed this section of the show. It's been really cool. And
to be fair, I've got a few more on my never played and don't really like list.
Go on.
We could definitely. Well, I don't know. We could go into another rabbit hole. I know.
Just run through them. Just run through them. Just give us a quick list.
Oh, okay, off the top then. So never played. The other ones I had: Far Cry series, never played.
Wow.
Titanfalls 1 and 2, never played. And games I didn't really get on with or like too much regarding hype. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, I didn't really get into. And Luke and Scott will hate me for this, but Outriders is another game which I didn't mind when I played it for the first hour, but I just could not bring myself to continue playing it.
No, I can see that one, mate.
Yeah, no, I can see that one. Yeah, I didn't.
Someone
that
who's
much.
Many hours into it, I've fallen right off that. I think the game has some real fundamental problems that they just haven't been able to fix. Where I've not played in a while, so I can really see why people would be put off by that. I've been beating my head against the wall on that game, and it's just had enough to keep me going at the very beginning, but I've sort of fallen off that heavily recently.
Excellent. Well, it looks like we've cleansed everyone's souls. Anime Rats, our fathers, for our fathers we have sinned. Maseko, praise be your gamer soul. Pixel Slapper, it's Sunday. Let's confess it all here. Yeah, absolutely. Indie Gamer feels cleansed. That's good. We'll do another confessional perhaps in about a month's time if we can. I've got a couple of other things. So we probably need to discuss and get off of our chests. But, welcome to the second hour of the show, everyone. 10 minutes in fact. Chat, thank you very much for being here. You guys are awesome, and we'd very much like you to get involved in the second half of the show. We've actually got 5 topics, kind of mini topics, I guess, to get through in the next 50 minutes, so perhaps 10 minutes on each if we can. And the first one was turned out to be quite, when I was posting the topics on Twitter, it was quite controversial. I think people missed the fact that I'd put Starfield delayed in quotation marks, because I know there's a few people out there have been claiming that Starfield is delayed, and lots of people have rightly come back saying, well, how can it be delayed if there was never really a launch time, a release date anyway? Fair point. And to be honest, most of the large mainstream media obviously have avoided using that. Probably an internal release date was set, and it seems like it might have slipped from the internal one, but nothing was ever official, so technically it can't slip. But guys, I need to ask you, and perhaps, like I say, I'll come to you first, Luke, bearing in mind your Fallout 4 kind of comments and Bethesda Game Studios in general. Do you think Starfield is a little overhyped? Because, the fact that everyone's jumping on the fact that it might not come out till late 2022 and it's not quite as finished as everyone thought and stuff, are we pinning a little too much on Starfield? Because it seems to be the one kind of franchise or IP that people are kind of clinging to on the Bethesda deal. And I actually think there's so many others that have bore fruit already, like the Doom series and, like you say, Elder Scrolls and stuff. This is, in reality, a brand new IP that no one's seen or heard about from a studio that has created one of my most favourite games, but I absolutely take your point in that they can be a bit clunky, buggy and stuff. Are we pinning a little bit too much faith and hope in this title, do you think, as Xbox fans?
Yes, I think that's probably fair. I think you're right in that, it's a weird level of hype for a game, as you say, that nobody has seen. We haven't seen anything. We've seen the shortest teaser trailer known to man, and then a couple of leaked screenshots. So it is weird, and I guess I get why people are hyped with it, because it's Bethesda Game Studios' next big game. So to some extent, we can go, well, it will have X, Y, and Z, but we could be wrong on some of the stuff that it has, and we don't know how it plays or anything like that.
Let's hope the X, Y, and Z that it doesn't have his bugs and clunky shooting mechanics.
That would be nice. I'm not holding out too much hope for that, but that would be nice. It's kind of just endemic to Bethesda's games at the moment. But so it is. I think, to be honest, it was invariably always going to happen as soon as it became console exclusive to one platform or another. It wouldn't matter which platform it was on, whether it was Xbox or PlayStation. In an alternative reality where Sony buy Bethesda, for example, it kind of becomes fodder for the console wars then, to some extent. And so, you kind of have, or some people have the biases towards that, and, that game becomes a part of it. And then the other side, of course, just thinks, well, it doesn't really matter because it's not going to be good, or we've not seen it. And, you have all this kind of weird back and forth, and ultimately it's just a game made by a very successful studio. They need to pull something good out of the bag. They're in the kind of not quite equivalent, but they're in the BioWare stage of redemption at the moment, which was, after having a game that did not do well, or that was not good by common consensus in Fallout 76. With BioWare, it was Andromeda. They need to try and make the next game good. BioWare did not do that because Anthem came out. I suspect Bethesda will have a better shot of it, and I think Starfield at least conceptually sounds unique enough or interesting enough for it to be a cool game. But we just don't know. Like, until Todd Howard gets up on stage and says, here's a game, here's 10 minutes, this is what you do, these are the kind of unique elements. We're all kind of guessing into the wind, really, as to how it's going to be and what it will be. So once we see it, I think we'll have a better idea of, okay, can it justify any of the hype? Yeah, because if it comes out at E3 and there's gameplay and it looks fantastic, then it'll be like, okay, then there's time to get hype for it, right? Then you can be like, okay, this is going to be a really good game, or this has a lot of potential, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's peculiar, isn't it, Scott? I mean, the fact that that it wasn't quite as completed as people were assuming, and to be honest, no one from Xbox or Bethesda had mentioned otherwise. They certainly hadn't said, well, actually, hang on, guys, the game's not ready for a while yet. They certainly didn't come out say that. Are you quite surprised by the amount of sort of traction this, and again in inverted commas, sort of delay has had, or because it seems to have blown up out of nowhere, and I can't really see the problem because, like I said, A, there was no release date, B, we don't know anything about the game. Same question to you, I guess. Are people pinning too much hope on this game? Do you think?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about release dates, especially with what we've gone through over the past 12 months or so, I think anybody pinning their hopes on any release date is maybe a little bit naive. But obviously, Starfield, generally speaking, just down to, as Luke mentioned, sort of the exclusivity side of things has become a really hot topic of conversation, and there's a lot of eyes on it. And I think a new game from an established and well-loved developer, sorry, a new IP from a well-loved developers is probably always going to have an element of hype. If you think of, I don't know, I can't think of maybe another developer off the top of my head, but if you think of your favorite developer, if Rockstar came out next week and announced a new IP, but they only showed a teaser. And actually, I just rewatched the teaser trailer while it was speaking there, and it really doesn't give you anything at all, does it? There's literally just a picture, what looks to be a planet in the background, and then maybe a small ship or something. But if Rockstar came out next week and announced a new IP and released just a similar style of trailer, there would be a load of hype for that game because it's coming from a well-loved developer that has a track record of developing and releasing great games. And in some people's eyes, obviously, as the conversation has just proved. So I can understand why there's hype, but then that's, I guess, multiplied by the fact that it's now the next game from Bethesda that's going to be released, well, I guess with the exception of Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo, following the acquisition by Microsoft. And even Todd Howard himself, I think there was a clip going around on Twitter recently where, if you remember, I think Major Nelson did a podcast where Phil Spencer, Pete Hines, and Todd Howard appeared shortly after the acquisition was announced. And I think he even asked the question, he was like, "So Todd, tell me about Starfield." And I think that literally the only thing he said, and I think a few people in chat have actually alluded to it as well. His only response was, "I think it's getting a lot of hype for a game that nobody knows anything about," or words to that effect.
Absolutely.
Which is true. But Bethesda releases a new IP. The creators of Elder Scrolls, one of the best and most loved IPs ever, I think isn't too far-fetched to say, releases new IP, then yeah, people are going to get excited. The news about it being sort of delayed is not the right word, but there was seemingly a growing expectation within the industry that Starfield was going to be released in 2021. And obviously that new game that everyone's excited for coming out as soon as the end of this year was pretty exciting for people. And then to hear it sort of seemingly not being released actually now for another 12 months. If you take Jason Schreier's reporting as gospel, it sounds like it's actually going to be a little bit later. I think some people maybe thought, the pandemic might have pushed it to Q1 2022.
Well, didn't Jeff, I think Jeff Grubb came out saying it had been pushed to Q1 2022, but like you say, it seems to keep slipping and slipping and slipping. But
yeah, exactly. And well, and just as Luke mentioned, it's a game that we need to see to really truly get excited for. And hopefully this E3 is the one that we're going to finally see what it is. But then it's also one of those things. Well, if it's not until 2022 and late 2022 at that as well. The game's still got another almost 18 months of development left before it's actually released. So what are they going to show? Is there a risk that they show maybe too early and it has maybe a halo effect? People were really down on that Halo demo last time. Is there a potential if you show it too early that people have a similar thing, especially considering the hype and the excitement around it? Will people see it and it'll be like, "Oh yeah, that looks good." And is that going to be it? So it's going to be interesting to see the reaction to it at E3.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree, and I certainly do hope we see it at E3, because if it isn't coming out till late next year, let's assume the rumor is correct, just for the sake of this argument. I just hope that there is something to show us at E3. To be honest, Pux, is this something that's on your radar? Obviously, given your love for the Fallout and the Elder Scrolls series, are you kind of hyped for this yourself, or are you kind of just waiting, like Luke says, just kind of waiting until we actually see it?
Yeah, I'm kind of similar to Luke in a way, and I think I've mentioned this on a previous show a while back. In that, yeah, yes, I love the Elder Scrolls and Fallout series and everything else, and I'd like to believe Starfield's going to be fantastic, but I'm definitely on that side of the fence of, nobody knows anything about it. We've not seen anything about it. No gameplay, no real video footage of it. I can't understand where the hype comes from, and again, because of the fact that I haven't seen anything of it personally, I can't get excited for it. That's kind of how I am with these things. If I haven't seen something visually, it's difficult to get hyped about it, in my opinion. So why there is so much hype about it, I haven't got a clue.
No, fair enough. Well, it will be interesting to see, and we will know in the next 5-6 weeks. When is E3? How many weeks away is E3? Blimey,
two, 3 weeks away?
3 weeks, isn't it? Crikey. Yeah, we'll
yes,
certainly know
it's
by
free,
then. Yeah. So excellent. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And to be honest, we're probably looking at you for this one, if you don't mind, Luke. Mass Effect. What do you make of it? Is it a good remake?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's it's so it's not, obviously it's not from the ground up, right? So it's got a lot of the foibles and issues that the original games had, ranging from Mass Effect 1 combat isn't, amazing for the time. I think we're a little more tolerant of it. 3 still has the ending stuff, which I won't spoil, but all of those sorts of things, right? So but I think they've done a really good job with it, notwithstanding that Mass Effect 1 gets the biggest treatment of the 3 because it's the oldest. So that kind of gets, in addition to the across the board updates, which are, they're all 4K, native 4K, 60 FPS. I think as well, you can, at least on Series X, you can have, there's a 120 FPS mode as well. So that's all in there. Every game gets that. Mass Effect 1 also gets kind of a bit more of a touch up in terms of textures and lighting and some adjustments to the controls. The Mako gets a bit of an overhaul in how it performs. So there's all of that that kind of works through the trilogy. I think it's fantastic, but I mean, I'm biased to some extent because the original trilogy is such a kind of important part of my own gaming experience. From when I've started to now, and it's like that for a lot of people. So you always look at those games and you think, oh, they're just amazing, and you forget about all the issues.
We were quite forgiving back in the 360 days, weren't we, compared to nowadays? I think gaming has progressed, particularly around physics and kind of game mechanics. They've matured, and I wouldn't say perfected, but they've got better and better. And it's not until you do go back, and particularly if you're going back all the way to something like Perfect Dark and stuff, and you think, wow, even the button layouts on the controller are just so janky and weird compared to the, what Pucks and I call the sort of Call of Duty standard to a certain degree. I know there's variations of that, but yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. You do play these games where you have the nostalgia factor, and you just forget a lot about the issues that they had, or you've not played them for so long, that you forget how much games in the equivalent spaces have advanced in terms of their quality of life stuff and controls, etc. I genuinely think that they hold up pretty well with the Legendary Edition. They hold up pretty well today, but I think the best kind of example of some of the magic that these games still have, or that they can have, is the fact that my partner has never played any Mass Effect ever. She'd heard about them. She's a huge Dragon Age fan, so she played that in the BioWare space, but she's been absolutely addicted to the Legendary Edition, and she finished one
you mentioned
basically basically a day and a half ish. Bearing in mind it's at least like a 20-hour game, so it's pretty ridiculous. She's just coming up to finishing 2, I think. and she loves them. But one of the things, kind of going back to our point, is that she does have these problems with them where she's like, why is the AI acting like this? Like, this is weird, or like why. Why does the cover work in this way? Because she's used to games that are modern, right? And the Legendary Edition doesn't get rid of any of that stuff. So I think it's great, and I'm just happy more than anything because I think Mass Effect really needed something like this to come along, because it's been in the doldrums for such a while. Andromeda was not good, and it's that was on the back of 3, which is a fantastic game, but had the ending stuff, which was a real issue. So I'm really happy for it, and I think it will just serve to reinforce EA and BioWare, going forward, that look, this is a franchise people really love, and let's really put a lot of time and money into the next installment of this, and try and bring back the series. Try and get it back to its glory days. It's
quite a good idea, rejuvenating it, isn't it? And like you say, introducing it to a potentially new audience in readiness for Mass Effect 4 or wherever it's going to be called. But no, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Scott, someone who's never really been much of a Mass Effect fan, has this tempted you back in, or are you still pretty much on the fence with it?
Yeah, it's not one that I'm going to get into. I'm afraid. I think part of it being obviously a collection of the 3 games. When I look at that, I think, oh Christ, that's a lot to get into. If it was maybe the first one by itself, it might be one of that. I might be tempted, but it does seem quite a daunting task to go through all 3 games back to back, especially as I didn't really click with the first one the first time around. The only thing I'd probably add is I'm just really pleased for BioWare. I think Luke alluded to it there. They've had a bit of a rough going as of late with Andromeda and Anthem, and obviously these are remakes of games that were loved when they originally came out, but it's good to see just a little bit of positivity coming from that development studio. I know they probably had some assistance from other people as well, but it's really good, and hopefully for fans of the series that gets them excited for whatever the next Mass Effect game turns out to be.
Have you ever played any of the Dragon Ages?
I have not, actually. Maybe that should have been on my list for the last one, but no, I haven't. I wanted to try. Was it Inquisition? That maybe the most recent one? Yeah. But I just never got round. I just never got round to playing it. My backlog's big enough at the moment. Never mind adding more games to it.
It's quite a big game. But no, I really like the Dragon Ages. They're pretty cool. Pucks, Mass Effect the Legendary Edition. Is that on your radar?
It's not really, no. I mean, back in the day, I played and finished Mass Effect 1 and 2, and I enjoyed them enough. But I think, again, this is something else I mentioned on a past show, that as much as I enjoyed playing them at the time, I wasn't into them enough that I bothered playing 3, and the same thing around, I've seen the images of the game. The game visually looks fantastic, especially compared to, obviously, the originals, but yeah, again, it's one of those. It's probably been on my list at the beginning, actually, of games I'm not too fond of, I guess. But it doesn't really count because I liked it enough when I played it the first time. But yeah, I'm not too fussed about jumping in again, if I'm perfectly honest.
No, fair enough. What are the chat up to? I know Ballman Gamer seems to like it.
Yeah, I've got a few things. 2 comments here. So Baldman Gamer, I'm so in love with Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Looks amazing, plays really well, and brings back so many feelings and memories. Plus, I can finally get it on with a blue alien.
Yeah, with the blue alien. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, she's quite.
Does that mean it wasn't in the original, or am I missing something here?
No, I think you had a choice, but she's quite shapely. So yeah. Okay.
I see. And finally, and this kind of helps move us on to the next topic, I believe. Shizno Elite, who says, I'm so psyched for Biomutant and Mech Warrior this week, and then Scarlet Nexus next month.
It's a good time to be a gamer. Lots of stuff happening at the moment. This is obviously Biomutant. This isn't my gameplay. I borrowed this from PlayStation Access. So this is actually the PS4 footage. There is a link to their YouTube channel, down below in the description. But yes, Biomutant, obviously, I'm quite excited for this game, I think. I don't think I'm going to pick it up straight away. I'm still working my way through all the backlog PlayStation stuff. But I think I could like this game. But we'll wait till it's on Game Pass, perhaps. Let's move on with the next topic, which is, funnily enough, Biomutant and the disparity between the next generation versions. To my knowledge, Series X gets a 4K 60, native 4K 60, whereas I believe, and we'll come to you first again, Luke, if you don't mind, the PS5 is getting a 1080p up-resed 60 version. Seems a little bit odd to me, that. I mean, obviously the PS5 is a very capable machine. It's certainly capable of actually doing this. Is this just the developers running out of time with the PS5 version, do you think?
So I think actually what it effectively boils down to is that the PS5 and Series X, I don't even want to call them versions, I suppose. But when you play Biomutant on those consoles, they're actually running in essentially a back compat mode. Which has been kind of tweaked accordingly.
Yeah, that's true. It's actually the Xbox One and PS4 versions that release next week,
correct.
Isn't it?
Yeah, correct. So what it essentially boils down to is not that the PS5 in terms of hardware isn't capable, because clearly it is capable enough to run something like Biomutant at 4K 60. It's that the software implementation of BC on the PlayStation side is just not as robust or as good, which I think everybody's pretty much known for forever now, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you say that.
As Xbox.
God of War runs at a native 4K 60, so I mean, it can happen,
does,
can't
but it can happen, yeah. But that was specifically patched to take advantage of that. Any of the stuff that's on PS5, like Last of Us or Last of Us 2 with the 60 FPS or Ghost of Tsushima 60 FPS, they're all patched in, and essentially, just unlocking frame rate from the PS4 Pro version. That's all they really do. So, this is a little bit different than that, I guess, and it's not really for a small team. 20 people, trying to get a full game out. I just think it's caused more headaches than they really want to put the effort into right now, which is why they've just disabled it for launch, and maybe they'll revisit it at some other point. So I think it's not like, it's disappointing in the sense that if you have the PS5 version, it won't be native 4K 60, but it's not. I'm not disappointed in it from a dev perspective, because they're such a small team, and it's clearly the BC implementation and the PlayStation side in terms of software isn't as robust as the Xbox stuff, right? So or isn't as easy to kind of to bake into your game. So I think that's just kind of, it is where it is, and if you really if you're really concerned about the res, then just get it on a different platform, I think, is the overarching message.
Here's a question for the panel and the chat. Stick your answers down in the chat. So this could actually work in PlayStation 5's favour to a certain degree. So anyone who's interested in getting this game, will you be getting it when it launches next week and be quite content with the Xbox One version that is 4K 60? Or are you going to hang out until the actual next generation Xbox Series X comes along? Because I'm guessing if you're on Xbox, that it's a much easier pickup, isn't it, to get the back compat version? Whereas on PlayStation 5, if that was your only console, you might be thinking, well, actually, I'm actually going to wait then until the PS5 version comes out and get that at 4K 60 plus all of the graphical bells and whistles. But I'm just intrigued to know, chat, if you are planning to pick this game up, whether you are going to wait for the next gen version or if you're absolutely happy with the back compat version. Scott, is this game on your radar? What would you do in that scenario?
It's not on my radar, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
I've seen a little bit more of it recently, but it's not a game I know an awful lot about. Obviously, this past week's have been when a lot of the media coverage has come out, and because I've been switched off a little bit, I've not had too much of a chance to really check it out. So I'll probably maybe view some of the previews and things like that maybe next week and see if it tickles me fancy. But it's not on my radar at the moment. But in terms of just like the general concept of will I pick a game up if I know there's a next gen version coming out? For me personally, because I move between the Xbox One X and an Xbox Series X, depending on whether I'm gaming upstairs in my office or downstairs on my TV, I probably would still, because if I'm going to be playing it upstairs on my One X anyway, I'm not going to get the benefit of the Series X. And I guess it depends on what those differences are as well. I mean, you're talking 1080p 60 still if you're playing on there, so it's not like the game. It's not like it's Cyberpunk, is maybe what I'm trying to say. You know, it's not like it's a game that is seemingly completely, in some ways, broken and things like that. You know, it's just it won't look quite as nice. So if I was really interested in the game, I don't think that would put me off. But you know, there are games that I'm holding out for next gen patches before playing. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a game that I know there's a next gen upgrade coming this summer that I've been wanting to play that game, but I'm holding off until
it's already had one upgrade, isn't it?
So it's had an upgrade, but it's kind of like the native next gen version is coming. So I think it was just a patch to essentially unlock the frame rate, so it sort of is consistent 60.
I think it's 4K as well. I think they did 4K.
Was it 4K as well?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, but it's like a full next gen sort of version has come out rather than just the I guess the Gen 9 aware stuff that they've been doing. But I think just the general concept around the backwards compatibility between the two. I have seen a lot of people using this in the so-called console wars recently. And Mass Effect Legendary Edition is another one actually, because that game's up to 120 on Xbox, but it's limited to 60 on PlayStation. As Luke mentioned, it's just sort of it's a limitation of the hardware and how they both handle backwards compatibility. And on the Mass Effect side of things, the Xbox One actually supports 120 hertz. Now, obviously, none of the games will support it because the hardware is not powerful enough to do it. But as a platform and as a console, it does actually support 120 hertz, and that's why games like Rocket League have 120 hertz on Xbox Series X, but not on PlayStation 5, because both games are running backwards compatibility mode, and the PlayStation 4 version, because PlayStation 4 doesn't support 120 hertz, doesn't have that, while the Xbox One does. And I think this is just, as Luke mentioned, it's just, you know, I think Luke actually touched on a really important point as well. And I was really pleased actually to see THQ Nordic come out on Twitter when I saw a few of the exchanges where they were like, look, there's a small development team here. There's only so much they could do, and you know, kind of rather than just saying, "Oh, we're sorry" and all that, they actually said, "Well, look, no, we've got a small development team, and they're proud of the work that they're doing, and there is a next gen version coming later if you want to work." And they even said something along the lines of, "We'd rather you didn't buy the game than have an unhappy customers," or something like that. They were basically saying they wanted to be open and honest about how the game was going to perform out the gate. So I was really pleased to see that actually, and I really disliked seeing Biomutant being used in this weird console war thing between the Xbox version's better, because we know for a fact that PlayStation 5 could support it from a technical capabilities perspective. It's just obviously not quite there, and I'm sure in a couple of weeks it'll probably be patched in, and the next gen version will come probably a few months later, and everyone will forget about it. So
yeah, no, absolutely agree. And just I think the Xbox One X can do 120 frames per second on HDMI 2.0, so you'd only get 1440p max, I believe. But back in the day when the One X first came about, there was never any 120 frame per second game. I think that's correct. Yeah. Look it up. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm sure that's right.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like you say, you know, some of these topics do get used as bait for the console wars, unfortunately. And you know, it is a spectator sport, and sometimes there's a bit of fun. But like you say, when you know developers' hard time, work, and effort are kind of taken into vain and used as weapons of sort of, you know, this kind of fanboy war, it is, you know, that's when it gets tiresome and disappointing in lots of regards. Yeah, but Puxley, what's your take on Biomutant? This seems to be the sort of game I think you'd like. It's a kind of a little Zelda-esque on certain levels, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. This is it's definitely on my radar. I won't be picking up straight away though, not for any of the reasons that anyone's mentioned. It's mainly because you know, I've got a wedding to pay for, and buying new games unfortunately has to take a bit of a back seat. Yeah, that's fair enough. Understandably, I hope.
Scott will be there soon.
But sorry?
Scott will be there soon.
Yes, mate, I'm already there. Judging by some of the stuff I've seen this weekend.
But yeah, so I will pick this up at some point later this year, I'd like to say. But yeah, I mirror what everyone else has said, really. I think it's really unfortunate that this game of all games has been picked up to help fuel console wars. And I've seen it in the chat actually earlier that, a lot of people should bear in mind that this game was actually developed for the PS4 and Xbox One. So, we're talking last gen now. And we also, I think a large majority of us are aware that the SDKs from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5 are nowhere near the same. Whereas on the Xbox front, they've made a conscious effort to make sure that, through the smart delivery system and otherwise, that actually the API and the APIs to convert between one or the other are relatively seamless.
You know
I say
what?
relatively, because it's still complicated, right? But...
Absolutely. I mean, Xbox, and this was a question posed to us by the community, Ballman Gamer, I believe. Xbox really did double down on this whole back compat thing, and I think you're seeing the fruits of their labour, and they must be so pleased that and I guess don't forget Xbox and Sony and PlayStation are still businesses at the end of the day, and any competitive advantage and edge that they can get over the other will please their shareholders and obviously please their bosses, and that's absolutely fine. And Microsoft has spent a lot of time, effort, and money in their back compat programs and stuff. And like I say, this is the fruits of their labour to a certain degree. Like I say, not to say that in the future that the PlayStation 5 version won't be as equally as good as probably the Series X version, but in the meantime, it's really paying dividends, this whole back compat, like you say, APIs and just getting the whole program up and running and smart deliveries. It's a fantastic thing, and it's nice to see the fruits of their labour.
Yeah, 100%. And as well, I think both Luke and Scott were saying that this game, for how well it looks and how great the gunplay and the gameplay looks, for a 20-man team, this is a fantastic and absolutely great achievement on their part to release something of this quality. It looks fantastic. But as you just alluded to there as well, Microsoft did put their eggs in the basket of wanting to support, the different generations and stuff, and their SDKs have proven that it's possible. And unfortunately, yes, there's a delay to the PS5 version, but again, 20-man team. There's obviously going to be limitations to experience or technical know-how. And it takes a long time to develop games anyway. And I think, again, as both the other guys on the panel mentioned, that it takes long enough to create a game for one platform, let alone trying to take into account multi-platform and multi-generation, arguably as well. So no doubt they'll release a patch in the future for the PS5. But it's easy to see why it's on the Xbox first and not PS5. For better or worse reasons.
No, absolutely. Where are we with the chat? I think the chat's saying similar as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got a few things saved here. So this is regarding like delays and stuff. So Ballman Gamer, Sniper Ghost Warriors Contracts 2 have announced it's been delayed on PS5, also due to unforeseen technical issues. Yeah. All other versions launching on time. Shizno Elite, I'm sure it will be fixed. It's a bad look, but in the end, not a big deal. However, if this happened on Xbox, would people be defending the series and saying it's not a big deal? Pyro M at D says both versions of Biomutant are back compatible editions of the next gen. The next gen coming at a later date. I think we just mentioned that. Baldman Gamer again. Xbox was smart to hold off for the better RDNA, as they seem to be getting a clear advantage over the PlayStation. I don't know if I put it down to RDNA personally.
I don't think the back compat is, but I think perhaps going forwards graphically and frame rates and stuff like that, I think we're going to potentially see that again, the fruits of that particular labour as well in third-party cross-platform games. So, and to be honest, we kind of already have to a certain degree with obviously Call of Duty running at 120 frames a second on the Series X, but not the PS5, which I always thought was a very peculiar thing because obviously they've got the marketing rights. So you'd have thought that Sony wouldn't have been massively happy about that, but there we go.
Yeah. Pixel Slapper, this is regarding your question to are people in the community going to pick this up? Pixel Slapper says, no, I'm happy. Game looks great. Pre-ordering day one.
Yep.
Indie Gamer, the resolution is not the biggest factor. People obsess over res too much. Graphics and frame rate are much more important.
Well, yes and no. Well, no, yes and no. Yeah, but if you've just spent 450 quid on a PS5 and you're only getting 1080p when you could have bought a Series X and it's getting 4K, I would argue that you'd probably feel a little bit put out. But I do agree. I mean, obviously, both versions are getting 60 frames a second anyway. So, there is parity in the frames per second. So, given that, obviously the next thing is the resolution, I guess. But I'll take your point. I certainly, absolutely, a trillion% agree that frames per second, outweighs resolution every day of the week. Absolutely. But
anything I'd say that I think the only one that might be a bit, I don't want to say controversial, but maybe on the balance between 2 or 4 is the graphics side of things. Because I know we've had a few shows and I've seen other shows recently that talk about what's more important, gameplay or graphics kind of thing. So I understand what you're saying there, Indy. But I don't know if I would put graphics as being much more important. But hey, all entitled to our opinions, of course. I'll move on. Sorry, Boardman Gamer. Even with back compat on Xbox, the console itself makes the game look awesome thanks to the auto HDR and FPS boost.
Yeah.
Does this game have FPS boost?
I don't think it does.
No. This is just a
native 60.
Yeah, just.
Shizno Elite. I've been excited for Biomutant since they first showed it at Gamescom 2017.
I mean, has it been that long? Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been around a long time.
Boardman Gamer. I'd always choose smooth 60 FPS over resolution. Kiwon Hall, was never going to buy it, and 4K 60 won't change that. And lastly, Anime Razor. Games are better when they run smoother than look better.
Yeah, no, I do get that. I do agree. Yeah, interesting. Well, let's move on to the next topic because we are kind of whizzing through these. We've got 15 minutes left of our 2 hours. Scott, you posed the question. It's come to you first on this. You kind of asked the question how you think Xbox will be opening their E3 next year. And it was a great question, to be honest. And we were discussing as part of that where Bethesda fit into that and whether there was a separate show and stuff. And it appears there's going to be a joint Xbox Bethesda show. Do you think Todd Howard will be on stage alongside Phil Spencer and they'll take it in turns with their IPs, or do you think Bethesda will get a dedicated slot in the overall Xbox showcase?
It's going to be interesting actually, because I guess the first question to help answer that is what are Bethesda likely to show? Right. Starfield seems to be a given at this point, if rumors are to be believed, but we may get something like Wolfenstein 3, but we're unlikely to see anything on Elder Scrolls. Deathloop, Ghostwire Tokyo are obviously exclusive to PlayStation, so they're not going to show up on an Xbox stage. Yeah. Probably nothing from a Doom perspective to announce at this point. Indiana Jones.
You don't think there might even just be a teaser of the next Doom?
Well, I guess there's always that possibility. I guess just how far away it is. Indiana Jones seems to be a little while off as well. So I guess the question is with the way things or the way development is going, is do Bethesda have enough to have their own sort of almost dedicated show, if that makes sense, especially now that they're under the Xbox umbrella? Are they only going to turn up with Starfield and something like Wolfenstein 3? In which case, those two games could just fit in anywhere in the show. You'd likely fit them back to back with maybe someone like Pete or Todd introducing and those games and talking about maybe a little bit more about what Bethesda have been doing since they were officially acquired. But it doesn't sound like there's maybe going to be an awful lot from Bethesda, where in previous years they may have obviously had more because they could have shown some more maybe gameplay of Deathloop and Ghostwire, but that's not going to be the case here. So yeah, the first question is really what are they going to bring, and I think 2 games. My original thought was maybe they would go Xbox Game Studios and then Bethesda as basically 2 sections or 2 halves of the conference. But I think realistically, it's probably just going to be maybe a portion in the middle or at the very end, where I imagine there's a good chance they maybe end with Starfield, depending on obviously what they want to show. But it is interesting because the reason I brought this up when we were chatting through the week about what to discuss is again, this is just rumors, but there's been a lot of discussion this past week or so about what is going to be at E3 and what isn't from a first party Xbox perspective. And the latest rumors are there's going to be no Hellblade 2. No Fable, Everwild.
We'll hold that thought for Luke because I know he has very strong views on Hellblade 2. But yeah, that was a surprise, wasn't it?
It is, yeah, because we know that the Coalition aren't going to be there. Avowed and games like that seem to be a little while off anyway. Obviously, a lot of these games have only had CGI trailers. I think a few people are maybe under the impression that Avowed could be there and could be out maybe a little bit sooner than I'm expecting, which is fair enough. But Perfect Dark's too soon. We already know that Halo's going to be there. Compulsion should hopefully be there, but sort of some of the things that I was originally expecting for the show, which I was thinking, my original thought was, Jesus Christ, how are Xbox and Bethesda going to fit everything into what is typically a 90-minute to 2-hour show? How are they going to cram all this stuff in? And then slowly, or like I say, over the past week or two, things have been sort of seemingly, right, that's not going to be there, that's not going to be there. And now I'm at the point where I'm thinking, okay, right, what new are they actually going to show at this point? And what are we going to be talking more about what didn't show after the conference as much as what did turn up? Because as someone who's really excited for something like Fable and Hellblade 2, especially considering Hellblade 2 was, if you remember, was announced alongside the Series X back in 2019, if I remember rightly. So that's been a couple of years now. So yeah, what are they gonna be bringing? That's maybe a bit of a surprise. Of the stuff they've announced, how much of that are we going to be seeing? Now, what I would say though to that point though is, if all they could bring was maybe a new CG trailer, then no, I don't want them to bring that. I only want them to bring it if they're in a position where they can show off what the game is, how it looks, and how it plays. But at the same time, like I say, Hellblade 2, because it was announced so long ago, I was kind of hoping at this point they'd be in a position to maybe show something, because I am exceptionally excited for that game. But I think, both Xbox and Bethesda maybe don't have as much to show maybe this year, because of obviously the impacts the pandemic's had on development, where maybe it's going to be a little bit lighter, and that'll make it easier to combine into one show. But then maybe thinking beyond that, in maybe 2022, when obviously these games are in a position to show, maybe if Starfield isn't out until fall 2022, they'll probably have more Starfield to show next year. They may be able to show something a little bit more on Elder Scrolls. They'll probably be in a position to show something to do with Indiana Jones. If we don't see Doom this year, they might have something to do with Doom then. So there's next year is, I know it's obviously some time away now, but is maybe when it gets interesting, because at that point they may have to separate them out, because both publishing arms of Xbox, so to speak, will have a hell of a lot more to show next year, I feel, than this year, if things go as rumoured.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. But to be honest, as things go as rumoured, though, I mean, there's lots of hype being built around the Xbox showcase this year, and I just hope they can deliver on that hype. And again, they certainly haven't been sort of taming people's expectations. Luke, what was the point I was going to come to you with? Hellblade 2.
Hellblade.
Yeah, that was quite a disappointing announcement the other day, wasn't it? Because I was fully expecting to see gameplay and stuff.
Yeah, it is disappointing. I guess it's not surprising when you think about it, in that, again, it was probably announced a bit too early. They wanted to have some sort of nice thing to go alongside the Series X console reveal at the time, which, so I get that. But it's disappointing and obviously, it's not confirmed from the horse's mouth, but I think Jeff Grubb's about as reliable as they come. So if he said it's not going to be there, I wouldn't expect it. And the same for Fable, again, because we know that that's been in development in some shape or form for quite a long time. But, again, that's sort of understandable, because it looks like it changed engines. All the job listings up until about a year ago were for UE4. Now it's specifically talking about Forza Tech, so it looks like they've completely revamped that. And obviously that's an entirely new studio as well, in terms of Playground's RPG team. So there's a lot of teething stuff that no doubt will take them a bit of time. So yeah, and Perfect Dark, I wouldn't expect to see that either. Again, super early. Maybe, yeah, I think that's a fair shout, and I pretty much agree with everything Scott said. Wolfenstein, I could definitely see you turning up.
Yeah.
If indeed that's what Machine Games are actually working on next. Obviously, we know they're doing indie, but whether they're also doing Wolfenstein, I suspect they probably are, because they're probably big enough. But I think there were, correct me if I'm wrong, weren't there rumours of Omen, which was apparently this Arcane Austin game?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
So the rumors that Arcane Austin, who were the team that made Prey specifically, that they have a game that's codenamed Omen. that's supposed to release next year because it's been in development for quite some time. So maybe that would be, if there's going to be any kind of big surprise new IP game, I'd probably put my hat on something like that. Could be complete nonsense, but there have been rumblings about that for quite some time. So maybe something like that from Bethesda specifically. I think as Scott says, like apart from that, and then Starfield and Wolfenstein, what really are they in? Are they going to show? Probably not really that much. I don't think they have that much, as in that can be shown now. I think the Doom team. It's questionable whether the Doom team, id will be making Doom next. The Ancient Gods DLC was the end of the Demon Slayer's story. They said that's not the end of Doom games because it's a huge success for them. But they may try their hand at something else, and there's been rumors, they may have a go at doing something like rebooting Quake in the same way that they did reboot Doom, essentially with Doom 2016. So, yeah, and as Scott said, Deathloop, Ghostwire Tokyo, I think there will be an E3, but I don't think you'll see them at Microsoft's conference. I think they'll be, although I guess it kind of depends, doesn't it? Because it depends on how much they integrate it into the Microsoft show. If it's just back to back, if it's more of an actual, we are the same team, as it were, but Bethesda are kind of going to have their own presence separate, then maybe they will, because it's still good to show those games. They're still anticipated.
There was some recent news about Deathloop and how it kind of works, and I can imagine them dropping the trailer and the VODs after the event.
That is fair.
Yeah, and Ghostwire, we've only really seen one gameplay-ish trailer on,
that was
so I think
State of Play,
overdue for a proper run through of how the game plays moment to moment. So, so there's there is stuff, but it's really hard E3 to gauge, I think, because there's all this sort of stuff that we really want to see. But whether we do or not is really dependent on where the devs are in their cycle this time, because COVID's been a massive disruptor across the board. So, it's difficult. So, yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? But I'm going in with low expectations that I hope will be exceeded by the end of the showcases.
Yeah, no, I think that's the right attitude to be going into the show with. Puxley, is there anything that we've missed?
You mean in the chat?
No, in terms of games that you think might be shown.
Oh, I don't think so. For perfectly honest, I think most was covered as far as from what I can remember so far.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm good for my end. Yeah, I can't think of much else.
Where are we with the chat?
I've only got two things saved actually so far. Both from Shizno Elite. First is, so this was again kind of coming off the last topic actually. So Shizno Elite says, "I'm all for devs making sure the FPS is locked in turn, and then turn up graphics. But in the end, it's their art, and they can decide how they prefer for the game to be shown." And this one I liked and agree with. So I know if I were a developer, I'd be afraid to show anything in this day and age. It's almost like people look for anything bad and then magnify it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's just fuel for the fire, isn't it? In the console war, disappointing, but okay. Well, let's round off the show with our last one, and I don't think this is going to take long, but yeah, interesting. We'll come to you first, Scott, if that's okay. Rumors that Netflix are going to be entering the gaming world. I haven't seen hardly any detail around this at all, to be honest. I don't know if you have, but it's an interesting take, isn't it? I can only assume or imagine that they will be entering it into a game streaming kind of venture, a little bit like obviously xCloud and Luna and stuff. Is there any more details around Netflix entering the gaming world than that you're aware of?
So from the limited stuff I remember seeing through the week, was it from a job listing to hire an executive? I think to oversee sort of expansion into video games.
There's plenty of Stadia executives.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, I guess. I'm sure they're looking at it. They'll probably see the likes of Google and what Amazon and Microsoft are doing from a streaming perspective, and I probably think they want a piece of that pie. But the thing I would maybe be, well, I guess using Google as an example, obviously if Google can't do it, can Netflix do it? I do wonder like how successful it will be actually, because it's not like they've got any development studios themselves, because they're primarily obviously they focus on movies and TV shows, and we saw how difficult Google found it in terms of trying to create first party studios from the ground up, and how they've seemingly miscalculated the costs and the time needed. So if they are, good luck to them. I guess it is obviously a very hard thing to crack. And I think they'll find it very difficult, because if they're just hiring for an executive now, they're going to be way behind both Microsoft and Amazon, and even Stadia to an extent, if or when they ever do make that venture into it. But ultimately, they've got however many hundreds of millions of active monthly users that they could instantly tap into. That gives them a little bit of an edge, similar to maybe what Amazon have got with Prime and Prime Video and that sort of thing. So maybe there is an opportunity there. And I think they do, if I remember correctly, don't they do some sort of interactive storytelling stuff on Netflix?
Yeah, there are a few
It's not
things.
video game, but they've maybe dabbled a little bit in some and something loosely related. So, but I don't think there's anything too concrete just yet. But I think, like I say, it'll be a really tough nut for them to crack.
It's a strange one, isn't it, Luke? I was really surprised when I saw this, because at least with Amazon and Google, you can, even for them, I was a little surprised that they were going to venture into this particular sort of realm, as it were. But Netflix feels like one step even further removed than those two. It's a peculiar one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think to some extent it is, because I mean, you wouldn't say it's a natural space per se for Netflix to move into because of what they do. Having said that, I guess they have, in a kind of indirect sense, they've been getting deeper and deeper into gaming as a medium in general. Obviously, they've done stuff like Black Mirror Bandersnatch, for example, which was interactive, and they've done other experiments like that. And then obviously they are heavily investing in and producing shows that are based on very iconic and popular video game franchises.
Yeah, that's true.
So The Witcher obviously it was a book series, but it's probably best known for its gaming counterpart. Resident Evil, they're doing Infinite Darkness for. There are Castlevania, right? So there are lots of these things that they're getting into. And I guess they're just looking at it in terms of, okay, because I think one thing that's important to highlight about Netflix as an entity is it's quite debt heavy at the moment, and that's because they've invested an awful lot of money in original productions. And it's become the kind of centerpiece around their whole platform. So they're probably just looking at, okay, how can we diversify what we do a little bit? And part of that might be, okay, making more interactive experiences, perhaps charging for them outside of Netflix, as in you don't have to have a Netflix subscription to actually access these. You can pay a one-off fee. I think there were rumors that they might want to do something like Apple do with Apple Arcade, where they can curate some games themselves, get deals with independent developers and, to make games for them. They may even do stuff like, way down the line, look to, okay, we've got this, this suite of actually quite lucrative IP ourselves, so maybe we want to leverage that in the gaming space. So, I mean, these are all points that they've probably considered and that probably they'll look into. But it's getting a bit crowded now, all of this gaming stuff. And so it'll be interesting to see. In fact, funnily enough, I don't know why. I guess it's probably just because they've shown they can do a successful subscription service, Netflix, supported by their own content. But I think when I think of them, I think they would probably do much better than Google have done. Like, it seems like, I guess, I think they're more on the pulse of what people might want with this sort of stuff and understand, okay, this is how we actually enter it and this is how we build it. So, and maybe the same extent to Amazon as well, right? I think they probably would be more successful at it in terms of uptake. So I think it's going to be really interesting. It's a long way off whatever they're doing, or in terms of their grand plan, it's probably going to be an incremental thing. So I'm interested to see where they go for it. But I'm not adverse to them entering in. As long as they just tell me what you're offering me, and then we'll have a look.
Yeah, but I do take your point. It is an incredibly crowded space, and when you've got someone, particularly with game streaming, as well established as Microsoft, and and also PlayStation with PS Now and stuff, it is an incredibly tough sell to the board. Surely, deciding that they're going to go into this particular realm, as it were. But Pux, was you surprised by this news? A little bit confusing to me, but as Luke's just explained, perhaps it's not quite the giant leap that it may seem at first.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard it, it was more about how they're thinking of moving into games, but it wasn't written in the same way as it was with Google when that first got announced. It was they're going to go into game streaming and launch their own platform and service, and then Amazon were jumping on the bandwagon a couple of months later. But the way this one's written, it's more, they're and I've got an article in front of me as well about how it seems to be more the fact that they're willing to fund games but being developed potentially by other developers, or maybe have their own internal dev studio to make things based on their franchises. And I've seen a comment earlier from Pyro M in the chat who says that Netflix funded the Stranger Things free game, so maybe it'll be other Netflix original shows getting more indie developed games. And from other articles that I've kind of seen, and again I know this is all top level rumor so far, that kind of seems to be the approach. And that also, and in terms of my opinion on it, that seems like the approach which would make the most sense. And I've also found another article as well, which has a small snippet which says that alongside having funded the Stranger Things 3 game, apparently Netflix, bear in mind this article's from 2019, and it says that Netflix has already also started making a turn-based tactical game based on the show The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. I haven't heard of that show, but they're making a game based on that show by the looks of it. That's been developed for a while. So it seems like
that came out, actually.
That has come out, has it?
Yeah, I think it came out. Yeah.
Dark Crystal was the old Jim Henson film, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes, because there was a new there was a Dark Crystal show on Netflix.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Ah, fair enough. That's completely passed me by, I'm afraid to say.
To be honest, the original was in kind of mid-80s, the Jim Henson thing.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. But yeah, that's the kind of way I see it going. Rather than being like, we're gonna relaunch our own streaming service, it seems like it's more we're going to fund making games based on our Netflix originals, which I think a lot of people might actually like, depending on obviously what originals they pick. But I'm sure a lot of people will jump onto it, and that seems like the best course of action from my point of view. But what do I know? Maybe they are going into streaming after all.
No, it's an interesting take, and I think the leap to assume that Netflix were going into the streaming, obviously with the core business, shall we say, would I don't think that's such a huge jump to make for them. But it's all very interesting stuff. We'll have to just kind of see where that one goes, to be honest. I think we're going to wrap up the show there. Pux, just before we do, were there any last comments that we need to run through? Have we done that?
No, I don't. The one I read by Pyro M was the last one I had saved.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, chat. It's been an absolute pleasure cleansing everyone's soul. We will do this again. I quite enjoyed the confessionals. We'll do it again. And like I say, we as gamers, we do have likes, dislikes, different strokes for different folks, and it's a great thing. And to be honest, even with myself, there's contradictions because again, I love Red Dead, but I don't like GTA so much, so I can't even blame it. Unfortunately, like Scott, on the developer itself, because I have a contradiction in there somewhere. But no, really enjoyed that chat. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, everyone that posed us questions as well. We didn't get round to all of them, but we will try and fill those next week if we can. Pixel Slapper, please try and get in touch if you can, either on Discord or Twitter. It would be nice to have a discussion with you around you winning last week. I appreciate that you may want to redonate that, and we're grateful for that, but let's have the chat. Panel, thank you very much for being here. It's always a pleasure. Luke, I hope you had a good show. Did you enjoy it, my friend?
Oh, always, yeah. So always enjoy it. Particularly this one. I really like the confessional stuff. It's always fun to hear kind of these these wacky things
Nuances.
like The Witcher 3. Not a good game, nonsense. But yeah, no, it's always really interesting how, you know, some games really connect with people and others bounce off them, and you just kind of look at them and you're like, well, how? Well, like, I don't understand. But then they explain it and you're like, oh, okay, actually I understand that.
Exactly.
So no, awesome stuff, and chat's been great, and yeah, it's been a good one.
Yeah, excellent, fantastic. Well, thank you for being here, Scott. Congratulations again, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully your gaming life will continue long into marriage. But I hope you've had a good show. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, as always, Flap. Really, really enjoyed it. That first segment was a whole load of fun as well, as Luke mentioned. So yeah, loved it. And obviously, as always, thank you very much to everybody in chat.
Absolutely, it's always fun doing those off the wall ones, and yeah. We do have lots of fun. They're quite good for slow news weeks as well. So, Puxley, again, thank you for being here, my friend, catching up with the chat. Hope you had a good one too.
Yes, I did. You know what? I know we kind of did the confessional stuff kind of off the cuff, seeing it was you know, a pretty slow news week. There wasn't really much going on, so we kind of did that as a, you know, almost like a random thing. A great idea, by the way. It seems to be. A lot of the people in the chat seem to have loved it, and you know, I think we got really into it as well, because I don't think we expected it to take the whole first hour of the show. So it just goes to show. And I've just seen some people in the chat as well saying that we should make a religion out of it, Father Flap. So
yeah,
I think that's your nickname from now on.
Yeah, let me get me thinking cap on that one. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. But no, really enjoyed the show. Fantastic. Always enjoy doing these shows.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here. We will do it all again next week. I have no idea what's going to happen within the next 7 days, gaming news-wise. Hopefully, we've got some big stuff. I get the funny feeling there may be, obviously, more rumours as we encroach on E3, but I think also, I don't know, there might be some quiet before the storm. So, yeah, we'll see how.
I'll quickly add something as well before we clock out. Just wanted to say to people that if you in the chat have any questions that you'd like us to pose on a next week's show or a future show, please join our Discord and give us those questions. We have been given a lot of questions in our Discord very recently, and a lot of really good ones as well. And we've definitely got them in our kind of little book of notes to bring up as topics in the future. So if you have any other things you'd like us to discuss or put our thoughts to, by all means, please pose your questions on Discord, and hopefully in the future we can come and address them.
You know, absolutely. We like to cover the topical stuff, but it's always nice to have stuff in the back pocket that we can bring out anytime. So yeah, no, that's fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure. We really do enjoy doing these. If you like what you've heard and seen over the last 2 hours and 11 minutes, please hit the like button, share, subscribe, do all of those good things. Help us to promote on Twitter. We are slowly getting our Twitter channel back up. I think we're just over 1,000 followers yet again. We were up to 1,600 before, but we're getting back there, thankfully. So it's all thanks to you, our fantastic community. Safe gaming, everyone, and we will see you on the next one.